Welcome back, historians. It's Mrs. Lancette, and this is part 2 of our Notes 4 video. So go ahead and open up your packet to page 12. Make sure you have a highlighter and a pencil, and then we'll get started. So yesterday we were talking about a new president during the Great Depression. His name was Franklin Delano Roosevelt. So we call him FDR for short. And his campaign promise was to try something new, something different, try anything. And that kind of was his philosophy during the entire Great Depression. And so what we're going to talk about today are sort of 3 different categories that the programs fell into. So imagine there's been an accident, you've been seriously hurt, maybe your arm, and you certainly need more than a Band-Aid. So you go to the hospital real quick. It's an emergency. You are in extreme pain. So the doctor meets with you and kind of assesses the situation, maybe gives you a little bit of pain medication to help relieve the immediate pain. And then while you recover, he'll check to see if you need surgery, maybe something a little bit more long-term to help you properly heal your arm. And so those are the 3 categories that we're actually going to look at in terms of Franklin Delano Roosevelt's New Deal and the work that he did with Congress to help Americans get through the Great Depression. So the programs that fall in the first category, just providing relief, almost like a pain reliever, helping you out, dealing with the pain, but it wears off, so it's temporary. The next category is what we would consider the more of the recovery, which is also temporary, but a little bit more long-term. You won't be able to stay at the hospital forever, but you'll stay there until you can get back on your feet again. And then the third category is the reform. What we're going to do that is going to last forever. So if your bones have trouble healing, you'll maybe need surgery to permanently correct the situation or correct the problem. And so when we look at the United States during this time, we want to consider some of the programs that were developed under FDR and the work that he did with Congress to help with the economic emergency, in this case, that the United States was experiencing. Now, during this time, what ends up happening is the United States government's role in American lives definitely increases. So, for example, the government didn't do anything to regulate banking before the Great Depression. But during the Great Depression, or during the New Deal rather, Congress did do many bills and laws that helped to regulate what happened at banks. So just one example of how the role and in some cases kind of the power of the government increased during this time period. Now, many Americans were willing to accept that because they knew that the programs that were being developed were going to help them. All right. So in your notes on page 12, for the second vocabulary term, let's go ahead and write the New Deal. And then when you're ready, grab your highlighter and choose 2 or 3 key terms or key phrases that help you understand this definition, which is that government programs and projects and regulations to provide relief, recovery, and reform during the Great Depression. All right, let's start by talking about the relief programs. So relief, remember, are those programs that were meant for immediate help for Americans who were suffering. They were not going to last forever, so they were going to be temporary, and they provided emergency, like we need this now, relief for those Americans who are unemployed and in many cases homeless. So an example of a relief program is the FERA, the Federal Emergency Relief Act, which gave money to each state to help them open up soup kitchens. So this is something immediate that the states were given right away so that they could help feed all of those people out there who were hungry. Another program that was started is called the CCC, stands for Civilian Conservation Corps, who paid mostly young men to work on environmental projects. So they went out into deforested areas and planted trees. They helped to drain swamps in order to be able to build on land that was formerly unable to be built on. They helped to fight fires. I did put a video that can help you see the CCC and its work in Minnesota as one of your additional resources on our weekly calendar. The Works Progress Administration, or the WPA, created millions of jobs, immediate jobs that could be handed out. They were temporary, but they did a lot of work building public buildings, roadways. So think of this as kind of a construction crew. We got important work done too, which was nice. And then Americans were getting paychecks in their pockets, which was helpful for them and to help jumpstart the economy. Lastly was the Civilian Works Administration, or the CWA, which employed young people, usually single adults, to do jobs more in the cities, repairing roads and building parks. All right, so those are immediate reforms to help Americans right away to get a paycheck in their pocket and to get food in their bellies. All right. Roosevelt believed that ending the Great Depression would take longer-term government programs to get families, businesses, and farmers kind of back on their feet. And these programs fall under the recovery category. So they're long-term, but they're not necessarily permanent, meant to get industry and agriculture back up again and to keep people from continuing to lose their homes. So the recovery programs would be like the TVA, the Tennessee Valley Authority. It was a project headed by the federal government to build a dam and an irrigation system along the Tennessee River. Now, this was important because this area didn't have electricity or access to it, which means that no businesses would move into it because factories and businesses needed electricity to run by this point. The AAA, or the Agricultural Adjustment Administration, paid farmers to plant less. It actually made some Americans angry, thinking that we were stopping farmers from making more food. But what ended up happening is when the supply went down, the prices went up, helped to stabilize those prices, and that meant that farmers would get paid what they deserved for what they grew. When they grew too much, the price went way, way down, and that didn't help farmers at all. Also, another recovery program is called the HOLC, the Homeowners Loan Corporation, which through the government, not through banks, gave low interest loans to homeowners to prevent families from losing their houses and also, really importantly, from losing their farms. So again, these are recovery programs that were meant to, for example, get the Tennessee Valley up and running with industry so that electricity would draw businesses to build there. It would keep the farmers on their feet in terms of earning enough money from the crops that they grew, and then keeping people in their homes so that they didn't have to worry each night about where to sleep. They could focus on other things like getting jobs. All right, last is the category that was focused on the permanent fixes that might help our country from avoiding a major depression like the one that was happening in the 1930s. And these are reforms. So permanent changes made to solve some of those issues that created the Depression in the first place. Many of these programs still exist today. For example, the FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, was created to guarantee people's bank deposits and that they would remain safe up to $2,500. They also restricted banks from trading stocks and making risky loans. So the FDIC still exists today to protect our money that we put into the banks. The Securities and Exchange Commission required companies to publish important facts about their corporations so investors could avoid making risky choices in the stock market. So the SEC, as it's known, basically oversees the stock exchange to make sure that everything that's going on there is above board. And then another example, the Social Security Act provided pensions for people who were at retirement age So each paycheck, workers would put money into the Social Security, and then when they retire, they're able to pull that money out. So that still exists today for workers when they retire. It's not enough necessarily to retire on. You can't just count on that. People do still need to save, but it helps. So it's one more thing that the government was able to do to help make a permanent fix to protect people from the Great Depression or another Great Depression. Now, if you look in the lower left-hand corner, you'll see a bowl of soup and all kinds of acronyms inside of it. A big bowl of warm soup is often associated with helping people feel better, which is what FDR wanted to do. And the nickname for Roosevelt's New Deal programs became the alphabet soup for all of the acronyms that the government programs were made up of. CCC, AAA, WPA, SSA. Remember that political cartoon that I showed you yesterday where the Uncle Sam character was being helped by the doctor, FDR, with all kinds of different remedies. He was willing to try everything, and he brought all kinds of ideas up to Congress, and they passed many of them. So the New Deal, otherwise known as the alphabet soup, was President Franklin Roosevelt's answer to basically rescue America's economy. Remember, Hoover didn't think that changes needed to be made. We'd made it through small depressions before, but this was unlike anything the United States had ever gone through. Now, one major result of these policies is that the federal government's involvement in the economy was very expanded. So the role of the U.S. government got bigger in terms of laws and regulations related to business and banking and farming. Some people really appreciated it. Some people it made a little nervous that the size of the government was getting too big. So like I said, not all Americans felt this was the right approach. The Great Depression was not immediately resolved. In fact, the economy didn't fully recover until the 1940s when the United States entered into World War II. So many historians and economists believe that the work from the New Deal was helping things get better very slowly, but it was the participation in World War II that really pulled us out as the United States industry went into wartime production. Now, something else you might find kind of interesting is that Americans clearly liked the work for the most part, right, that FDR was doing. He was elected, of course, the first time. He was elected for a second term, and then, believe it or not, he was elected for a third and a fourth term. Now, you might be surprised to hear that because today we can only elect presidents for 2 terms. That's a maximum that they can be in office, but at the time there was no rule around that. Since FDR's presidency, the United States Congress has passed an amendment to the Constitution to limit the number of times a president can be re-elected. But just kind of a fun fact about FDR. So there he is, next to the box 1933, and we'll put in there FDR's New Deal. Now remember, this is on page 2 in your packet as we continue through the unit, working on the timeline. All right, one last thing I wanted to remind you is that you have homework related to the notes today in particular. The question is, which R is it? Relief, recovery, or reform, as we look at the programs under Roosevelt's alphabet soup. It's due Friday, April 10th, so tomorrow, and it must be completed electronically on Google Classroom. You do have a copy in your packet if you want to practice. That's fine, but just make sure that in the end you do turn in your electronic version. Also, I made a videotape to help you understand how to complete the electronic version if you're having any difficulties. So good luck and have a great day and enjoy your weekend. Bye-bye.